Welcome to Ranch Life 7005. We have the part 2 video coming to you right now where we're going to do the front brakes on this 2019 Honda Rancher 420. They keep the same brake systems through pretty much all Rancher 420, so this will apply to any one that you guys need to do. We did in the last video, you might have seen, where we did the rear brakes, and now we're going to show you how to do the front. We're going to change out the pads, and we're also going to bleed them if we need to get a more firm handlebar on the front here. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is turn your wheel all the way to the left so you can see your direction of your tire. Then you're going to want to remove the boot covering to prevent their stick stopper to prevent things from getting in there. There's two 10mm bolts in there, and you got a ratchet on an extension. I like my little Milwaukee driver, and you're going to pop those right off. One. And then down right in there. These two. And the boot comes right off with it. So there's your boot, and there's your two bolts. Now you can access your brakes. Once you've got the boot covering off, you can see a little bit more about what's going on in here. If you look, you have this little metal arrow that's out about with this little tab down here. What this arrow is a brake pad indicator. It'll tell you how much life is left on your brake pad. So usually it should be out a little bit further. You can tell that once it reaches this point, our brakes are ready to be changed. That's why they're mushy. Part of the reason, at least.
Okay.
Your next step is to hit these two little screws here with some penetrating oil, because we're going to have to get those off and access the pin and all the other parts that are underneath. So you see there, you just spray it down with some WD-40, and it turns out real nice. So grab a ratchet or a screwdriver with the flathead end on it. I use a ratchet because it's a little bit easier to loosen these two screws. They shouldn't be very tight, they should just start to come right off. I'm going to take my flathead and remove them the rest of the way. They're small, so keep an eye on them. They're only about that big. You'll see they're going to drop down. Okay, so our next step is to remove our brake caliper, and that's done with 12mm bolts. There are two of them. One of them is right here, and then the next one is underneath it, right about here. So those are your two bolts you're going to hit with a 12mm, and they should come right off. What else comes out here?
Okay.
Alright.
Now.
So that should free our camera. Take these pins out the rest of the way.
These pins hold your brake pads on.
Alright. And just to show them, let's see how bad these brake pads are real quick.
Well, there's not very much on the inside one, if you can tell there.
Yeah, it's pretty
almost
skinny and stuff.
Flat. You do not want to remove this hose.
No.
Your hydraulic hose. Or you will, unless you like bleeding brakes.
So this is the pin that you have to take out. There's two of them. Once you've got it out, you can get a better look at it here. Clean it up with a wire brush and some WD-40. Make it all nice and shiny again so that it goes in without any trouble, and it'll be nice and good for the next time.
Flush with this.
Alright, so the pad was originally all the way up and flush with this piece of metal here,
right.
But just by using his thumbs, he was able to push it down.
Usually
in
you
there.
use a C-clamp, but this was just real easy to get out. So
yeah, it may not always be like that, so we have a 6-inch C-clamp right over here just in case, so you can use to put the piston right back in. So you never know. Just kind of work it with your hands and shake it a little bit, and the other brake pad will drop right out.
Right.
The first one just fell straight down.
And you can see the piston is all the way seated back.
Yep, so that's your piston in there. Piston in the back there, and then you're probably going to grease around there to keep it so it's nice and firm. Or sweepy, I don't know what to call it.
So you can...
Alright, so it doesn't matter which pads go in the front so long as they're both facing towards the disc. And you can see how squished in they are, and it's time for new ones. We'll show you here the new ones in a second, so you can see the difference. We have some new brake pads for the front compared to the old ones. So as it's pretty obvious, these are the old ones and this is the new one. They are extremely worn on the other side down to the metal. You can see here how much of a difference there is. Dog licking me. It's pretty extreme. Also, important to clean everything out while you're working on it. Take a little bit of grease and just put it in this piston right here. Just like that. I see this. Alright, so we're going to do exactly what we just did, but on the other side. So you can see once you've taken all the parts off, it's loose. This pad is pretty loose in there. You just try and pull it out and you can get it. So you can see it's all worn out. So just wiggle it and it should slide right off. So again, before we take this pad out, we're going to use it to push the piston back.
Yeah, that's going in all by
itself. It goes in easy.
Yep, perfect.
Alright, well it's not too easy, but you could still muscle it in and push it back, so I'm just using my thumb to do it. And now, reach back in here and just kind of wiggle the brake pad. Alright, so just kind of push it forward so that it lines up with this here, and then pull it out, or drop it out.
Yeah, well, looks pretty good. Just...
Yep, everything's back intact. Okay. So you can see, so again, I'm going to hit this side with some brake parts cleaner, and then I'm going to put grease in and make sure it's all nice and smooth so it all works right. Alright.
Okay, so here's the spring that helps hold the brake pad in place. So we're just going to kind of gently slide it in there. And there it goes. You can see the holes kind of want to line up. So we're going to leave this one be. I'm grabbing the other pad.
Right now it's in, and the brakes are in as well. That's the brand new pads. So you can see the gap between the pads and how there is so much more of the ceramic part to slow it down than on the other brake pads that we took out.
Right, now we have to get this thing on the caliper.
No, that comes the fun part.
On the rim. Yeah.
Alright, so next thing you want to do is slide the caliper back on. It's kind of hard to do and film at the same time, but you just kind of got to mess with it, and it should just slide right back on. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but the mount for the caliper goes on the inside of the steel that's here. So you don't put it on the outside, it goes on the inside, and that should help you line it up so that it goes right back on. It should just slide on without very much trouble or resistance at all. Now we're going to put on those 12mm bolts again that hold the caliper onto the... I would make them hand tight. Just about hand tight, but don't torque them down, just hand tight. They don't need to be terribly, horribly tight. Because I remember when I went on there with the wrench, it didn't take much to loosen them off. Again, just hand tight, that's all it needs. Alright, now we're going to drive these pins back right in where we found them. So I'm going to start this by hand. I don't want to cross thread or strip these. And again, these were only hand tight as well. So, I'm going to grab my flathead screwdriver and put the protectors back on. Barely hand tight. They're made of lead, I believe, so they're very soft.
You can push your boot back on.
Now it comes back on the boot.
Now, if we have to bleed the brakes,
then we'll have
this
to
is the bleeder valve right here.
Yes. Honda puts that in a good spot. again, and tight. Alright, this side is now reassembled. You'll notice there is a little bit of play in the calipers, which is pretty much normal. You won't have to worry about that too much. That's just kind of the way they're mounted on. Alright everybody, time to reassemble the other side. I've switched it to a different view so you can see how it's supposed to look from your eyes. So I've already cleaned the whole thing up with some of the brake parts cleaner, and we've put grease inside the main piston as well as on the pins for in here. And it doesn't matter which side you put your new brake pads on, as long as the metal part is facing inside so it squeezes the cylinder. You can see there's some gunk in there. I probably could have cleaned it out a little bit better, but it doesn't matter too much. It'll be fine. So we're gonna just kind of slide them in. This one, the back one at least, should kind of wiggle its way in there. You can see there's a bit of a gap that you can feed them through. You just kind of got to play with it until it seats right in there and the holes on the inside line up. Now, keeping a finger on there to make sure nothing comes out, you can put your pin in, the first one at least, on the top of the caliper and line it up with the holes on the inside.
What kind of tires you got on there?
These are 28 by 10 by 12 Silverbacks.